Konnichiwa. Today, we're going to talk about one of the fundamental questions that people are asking me all the time. Now, this is a beginner's question, but I think it's going to be interesting to everyone because it gives us a chance to go into the fundamentals of how the organic Japanese strategy works. Alright, so the question is, very straightforwardly, how do I get started? How do I learn Japanese? What's the ground plan? What's the plan of attack? So I'm going to assume in starting this that you've decided that you want to go ahead with the organic Japanese method. The organic method has fundamentally two characteristics, which are that it's very light on study. Once we get started, most of what we're doing through immersion. And the other one, which makes it completely unique, is that we base ourselves on understanding the fundamental structure of the language, how it really fits together. Not so-called textbook or Taikim Japanese grammar, where they just tell you this bit of Japanese means that bit of English. We actually learn why it does what it does. We cut through all the random rules and exceptions and see how Japanese actually works as a completely logical language. Now, you don't have to use the overall organic method in order to do this. Organic structure can help you with whatever we're doing. But let's take it that we're proceeding with the organic method. What's the first thing we have to do? Well, right from day one, we start doing three things. And these are: 1. Learn hiragana. 2. Start learning vocabulary. 3. Start learning the structure of the language. And we're going to look at how we do those three things. First of all, hiragana. People sometimes scare you with saying that Japanese has 3 writing systems and thousands of characters. But we can deal with that as we go along. It's not going to be a big problem. What you're doing at first is learning hiragana. This is 46 characters. If you go to a university, they tell you on your first lesson, even if it's only a minor subject, by next week, know hiragana. And that's the right way to go about it. I've seen people pick at the edges of hiragana for months and never get very far. They learn a few characters, leave it a few days, learn a few more characters, find out they've forgotten the first ones. It can take a long time if you do it the wrong way. The right way is to roll up your sleeves and get it done. It's 46 characters. You should do it in a week or 10 days if you're taking it easy. Learn 10 characters per day, and you do it in a week with plenty of time to spare. Learn only 5 characters per day, and you do it in 10 days with time to spare. There are plenty of apps and things to help you learn hiragana, and we're not going to need to keep on drilling it after you've learned it, because that's built into the way we're going to learn vocabulary. So we'll come to that in just a moment. The reason I'm so insistent about hiragana is that you can't really understand the structure of the Japanese via the Roman alphabet. Part of what's wrong with the teaching of Japanese is that even when they do insist that you learn hiragana, they're still basing themselves on concepts that come from the Roman alphabet. So to learn structure, you must learn hiragana. I use Romaji in my first lesson and continue using it for a few lessons. That's partly because I know people are so bad about learning hiragana. It's also useful to you because if you're going to do several structure lessons in the first week or 10 days before you fully know hiragana, that will be helpful. But don't put off learning hiragana, whatever you do. Okay, now the second thing is you need to pick up some vocabulary. If you're coming in saying, oh, I know perhaps a dozen words like karate and karaoke and ninja, and that's all you know in Japanese, you do need to get some basic vocabulary. And I'll link to a couple of sites where you can find some. It doesn't really matter where you pick it up, but a couple of cautions here. You don't want the kind of site that gives you all the basic phrases like good morning and pleased to meet you, because partly these will be structurally incorrect, and partly you're not trying to learn at this stage basic conversational parrot fashion Japanese. You're trying to learn how the language fits together. So what we want is real words that describe the fundamental basic things of life. Person, house, dog, cat. Run, walk, talk, eat. big, small, hot, cold, that sort of really basic vocabulary. And it doesn't matter exactly what you learn. You look at lists, just choose the ones that appeal to you, the ones that you know you're going to be using all the time. And what we do next is we start an Anki deck. Now, I've actually started one for you, and I'm going to put that in the information section below. What is an Anki deck if you don't know? What it is essentially a set of flashcards where you just look at a card and see a piece of information, turn it over and get the answer. It's free and it's electronic. This gives you the advantage that you can have it on your phone or anywhere you want. But more importantly, that unlike flashcards, it isn't random. It's going to present the information, in this case the words, to you in an order that's designed to help you learn them. And it's also going to take notice of whether you did well on them or did badly on them the last time. And it's going to adjust the intervals on that basis. Now, some of the lists you'll find online have their own proprietary SRS. That's what Anki is. It's SRS-based repetition system. Don't use them. Things like Memrise and that sort of thing. Don't use it. Why not? Because when you start this vocabulary deck, this is going to be your one mother deck. You're going to use it for everything. From the first day you start learning Japanese until the day when you decide you don't need to use any kind of a deck or a study system at all. It's going to have a ton of stuff in it and it's going to be yours and no one else's. So we don't want any pre-made decks. We don't want any proprietary SRS systems. We want a single deck that you are going to be in complete control of from the beginning of your Japanese learning right through to the point where you don't need decks anymore. We will use a couple of very small decks later on for very specific purposes, but they're going to be small. There's the Sound Sisters deck, which we'll come to once we start looking seriously at kanji. But other than this, you're just going to have the one mother deck. Most systems that use SRS have lots of decks. You'll have a deck for kanji, you'll have a deck for sentences, you'll have a deck for this and a deck for that. We are just going to have that one mother deck, plus occasionally a couple of very limited single-purpose decks, which I'll only be using for a relatively short time. This is what I call the one deck method. Why do we have this? We have this because, as I said before, organic Japanese is study light. You have to review your deck every day, but that's the only long-term study project in organic Japanese. It's going to be the way you learn vocabulary. It's also going to be the way you learn kanji. So in that first week or 10 days, you will be entering the words you learn over that time in Romaji, but it's very important to go back once you know hiragana and change the front of the card to hiragana. If you need the help, you can put the Romaji on the back. Just copy it, paste it onto the back of the card, and write the hiragana on the front. And this means that you'll actually be drilling your hiragana without needing to use drill programs and things once you've learned it. Nearly all your cards are going to have hiragana on the front at this early stage. And the ones that aren't going to have Romaji, they're going to have kanji. So, what about kanji? Should you start learning kanji at this stage? And the answer to that is it's really up to you. If you want to start learning very straightforward, simple kanji, like the one for person, hito, the one for sun, the one for moon, that's fine. If you prefer to stay in hiragana for a while, that's fine too. We're going to have to start tackling kanji pretty soon, but it's not going to be a big job in itself. It's going to be part of your learning of vocabulary. Once we pass the Romaji stage, which only lasts a week to 10 days, we're having the words in hiragana, and we're starting to put one or two of them perhaps into kanji, depending on how fast you want to go with that. So, we learn hiragana, we start learning vocabulary, and we start learning the structure of Japanese. How do we learn the structure of Japanese? Well, that's very straightforward. We go to my structure course and we start it from the beginning. watch the lessons carefully, get the concepts firm in your mind. Feel free to go back and re-watch lessons as you watch the later lessons and perhaps you're not so sure about something we learned earlier. Go back, do it thoroughly, because this basic structure is what's going to carry you through the rest of your Japanese career. The fundamental concepts that I teach in the early lessons, some of them you're not going to learn anywhere else because nobody really tells you this stuff. You're going to learn how sentences fit together. You're going to learn what the particles really do. And honestly, nobody tells you this. Nobody tells you about logical versus non-logical particles. Nobody tells you what wa really does, what ga really does. You've got to learn this because this is going to make Japanese far, far easier than it is for everybody else. So these are the 3 starting points. Learn hiragana, because you're going nowhere without hiragana. Learn fundamental basic vocabulary, not greetings, not aisatsu, not complicated words that you may or may not use for weeks, but a selection of the basic words that you're just going to use all the time, that everybody uses every day, several times a day, because this is going to give you the platform you need in a short time to start immersion, to start actually reading and hearing simple Japanese. And from that point on, that's where your vocabulary is going to come from, not from lists, but from your experience in Japanese. And once we're at the stage where we can have hiragana or kanji on the front of the cards, then we're going to start using something called Yomi-chan, because you can link that up to your Anki and it will create cards for you automatically. You just type the word you want into a browser, hover over it, and you'll get that word with the English definition. And it's also going to give you a native speaker audio of the word. And all that goes into your Anki. So you see the hiragana on the front. You can choose hiragana or kanji. So you can have the kanji on the front if you want it, the hiragana on the front if you want it, and on the back, at this stage, you'll have an English definition. Later on, we're going to start moving into Japanese definitions, but you don't need to worry about that at this stage. So once you've got past the Romaji stage, Yomi-chan and Anki together are going to do the work of making cards for you. I would still suggest that you edit those cards once they've been made, and what you want to edit them for is giving yourself things like mnemonics, which can be in the notes on the back of the card. And I've talked about this in another video called the Dynamic Card Concept, and I'll link that above and in the information section below. But the important thing to understand as a general principle is that you want your definitions as simple as possible. For example, kiru, cut. If you look at the definition in a dictionary, it has lots and lots and lots of different definitions. You don't want them in your Anki. All you want is the simple definition, cut. All the other meanings of kiru come from that simple definition, cut, and we don't need to deal with them at this stage. You need to know the basic meaning of the word. As we go on, we'll get to its various complexities, and they'll make more sense as we're further on in learning Japanese. And you might say, well, shouldn't I leave them all on the card for reference? And the answer to that is no. You're not going to use your Anki cards for reference. If you want to delve into the word, find out more about it, use a dictionary, use something else. Anki isn't there for that. Anki is there simply for pinning words and their most basic concept definitions into place in your mind. Everything else is going to come later from your actual immersion in Japanese. That's how the organic Japanese learning system works. So this is a very, very basic, fundamental starting procedure. We learn hiragana, we start learning vocabulary, really basic fundamental words, and we start learning the structure of the language. Those are the 3 elements we need to proceed. We can start throwing in some kanji at this stage if we want to. That's a choice you can make for yourself. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below, and I will answer as usual. I'd like to thank my Gold Kokeshi patrons, my producer angels, who make these videos possible, and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere, who are not only supporting me, but coming on this journey together from these very beginning stages where we just start to grasp the basics right through to becoming fully competent in this beautiful language. Thank you all for accompanying me on this journey. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします。Class dismissed.